Welcome. Welcome to the 23rd Annual BioPharma Conference. All right, so now it's my great pleasure and honor to introduce our first speaker today, Professor Barry Sharpless. So Professor Sharpless probably is the one who really doesn't need any introduction. So if you won one Nobel Prize, people respect you, people think you're almost a god. And then for Professor Sharpless, who won twice the Nobel Prize, that just speaks itself. So I just want to say, I was chatting with Barry while coming to here. So what impressed me most is that he keep telling me make molecule, the importance of making molecules with properties. And then I told Barry, I said, that's so interesting to hear from an academic professor, because we think, we work in the industry, that's what we do. We make a lot of molecules, we try to find the molecules with the right properties, so it becomes a drug. But to hear from Professor Sharpless, especially the two-time Nobel Prize winner, say, we need to make more molecule with properties. So that's so interesting. So I don't want to waste anyone's time, so I will pass that to Professor Sharpless.
This is what I decided to talk about today, because I know we all in the world care about some of these worldwide diseases. And I don't know how your culture has dealt with it, but in the countries you were raised in, or this country, we know in this country, in the West, this tuberculosis was just a mystery disease. It was almost romanticized. But it was evil in the sense that you couldn't kill it. And Bill Jacobs is a great guy who works on tuberculosis and back in Einstein, and he spent his whole life going to risky places to collect it and try to find how to deal with it. And the worst part of it is that there's resistors. And the resistors just get in a little hole and they just wait till things blow over when you're trying to kill them. So what I wanted to mention this tuberculosis again, because it's something that came out of San Diego, out of Caliber and Scripps, and also Texas A&M, Jim Saccatini and Ina Krieger. There's been a countrywide effort. It's about 50 authors on this paper. So you see it's a major effort. And we ended up, well, right in the middle of this. We started about 8 years ago, and even Jiazhou in China made some libraries for it in Shanghai. But we ran right into the COVID, and so it drew itself out, and everybody started working on COVID. We did too. We just started making libraries against COVID. So everybody was distracted by that and not able to function very well. So that's just one of the many things that slowed it down. But now they've got a compound, and I just read the final paper a month or two ago, and I was convinced that it was an amazing compound, because and what I want to tell you about today is fluorosulfates. I just want to put fluorosulfates on the map, aromatic fluorosulfates. They are really, right now, the best I can recommend as a fishing tool. You go fishing for something good with one of these fluorosulfates, and they don't react with much. They're just so dead. If I had a blackboard here, I could write up, for example, I take parafluorosulfate. I take the fluorosulfate of benzene. So it's FSO2O benzene. I drop it in to warm concentrated sulfuric acid, no solvent, just sulfuric acid. And I add nitric acid concentrated. And next thing you know, within less than half hour, you've got para-nitrofluorosulfate. Quantitative yield. You can distill it, you can decant it, you can do whatever you want. In other words, it didn't dissolve in the sulfuric acid. It's like doing reactions on water. But the message is that these fluorinated sulfonyl compounds, they could care less about strong acid. They just don't give a damn about acid, which means they usually don't care about neutral pH either. And the only way you can get them to react is with, say, hydroxide in some homogeneous solvent like ethanol or methanol. So what is going to make them react? Why are they going to be good for finding covalent drugs? Okay, let me, I hope I don't get too, I have to try to stay on target here. Yeah. So here's the one that we ended up on after the COVID was over and they did a lot more. Calibre did a lot of typical med chem. This stayed with us. We always had this oxygen fluorosulfate. That was from the very beginning. We got the hits back at 8 years ago. And that was covalent on the enzyme that is very important to the bacterium for making its horrible membrane that is just, well, it's this ugly membrane. It's very fat and the thing looks like cotton candy when it's growing in your lungs, and things can't get into it. One of the problems, and it's scary looking stuff. And there's the rest of it that Calibre did in MedChem on, got the best other properties. But this part always stayed the same. And you might wonder, well, yeah, we've got that as a possible motif on many compounds. So is that a good thing, or isn't that kind of promiscuous? But the point is that it may be promiscuous, but it really reacts fast with this guy, this PKS13 on its serine, its active site serine, which is intended to dimerize two fatty acid pieces that are mycolic acids. They're abnormal pieces, but no, it gets captured by the and it happens in minutes, seconds, or minutes. So a lot of times when you don't get any reaction with a fluorosulfate, you shouldn't expect them to be everywhere. They're very reluctant to happen, but then something happens, and I think it's the electric field that's generated. The enzymes are, dancing and moving around, and all kinds of electric fields are fluxing through the active site. And this is something which I've come to believe in, thanks to Steve Boxer, and we'll mention that at the end in case you're interested in tracking that academic topic, which hasn't gathered much interest. But here we were back in I'm sorry, I'm looking at the wrong thing. I'm not used to this presentation. Is that it? Yeah, well, okay. We found with Jeff Kelly, this started back in about 2012, 2011, Jeff Kelly's group with Wen Tao and his postdoc and my postdoc, Jia Dong, they started going after trying to capture proteins with fluorosulfates or sulfonylfluorides. But the sulfonylfluorides were more reactive, and they even have background hydrolysis in physiological pH. So the fluorosulfates were great, and they would do things like capture very selectively fatty acid binding protein, this retinoic acid binding protein, which gets privileges to be transported to the nucleus and has important roles. So if we see what happens to it is it's made simply by taking phenols. We can make these there could be 20 phenols in a molecule and we can make the fluorosulfate. The perfluorosulfate seems ridiculous, but the compounds are nonpolar. They're very low melting. They're just not there as far as mostly you get a carbonyl derivatives, and they are seriously there. Thin layer is a big number one sign of being there for me. Well, my whole life, you either run polar on thin layer or you run to the top, and these guys run to the top. And what am I going to say here? This is, if you notice, this is a binding protein that has motifs that are really an alarm bell going off for this for tyrosines, arginines, flanked by arginines, a tyrosine in the middle, and then it's funny, I can't see that. Oh, there it is. Okay. Yeah, what happens is this forms quickly, and and it just stays there. And I've seen X-rays of probably 50 to 80 of these captured fluorosulfate compounds. You know, I just see them by courtesy when I go around, visit people, they're doing this chemistry, and they show me their picture. We got a lot of them too, because if you capture them, they'll often be very stable, and you can just take an X-ray, especially the tyrosine ones. The serine is different. Let's go on. Okay, I'll try to. Well, Grant Baer started this with Bo Jin, who was in Petrosi's lab at Caliber, and we worked together nicely. And she's gone somewhere else now, and Grant is, as far as I know, with the Salk, I think. And we had about 400 compounds. They were all fluorosulfates, if I remember. And so we were already prejudiced back then. We got 12 hits, and this was the hit that was most active then. It was pretty good. See, it's got that. Actually, it had an azo linkage here, which is a cheater for stilbene, in my opinion. We like azos because they're so easy to make, and we can always switch them out. But here, this is a compound that came out to be, it didn't bother serine proteases, a whole bunch of serine proteases that Caliber had access to. They had no effect. It had no effect on them. Optimization. We got to this compound, and that's the one being taken forward now as a drug candidate for TB. And these people worked at Arnab Chatterjee and Bayan Yang and Mike Petrosi. They were at Caliber, and they did SAR on these leads, and they found they had no Ames tests, or they had nothing bad to speak about up front. Remember, this organism that we're trying to kill lives inside macrophages in the human cell, and that's not an easy place to get to in the first place, I guess, and it's acidic. That's an interesting point to me, because when you get acidic in your buffer, fluoride, which is a lot of fluoride in our bodies, it's about 10 to the 14th molecules per liter. It's there since the beginning of time. When water hit rocks, the fluoride came out. There wasn't any chloride much around then. Chloride kept coming up and up and up and up. The fluoride stayed the same. It's still 1.3 milligrams per liter in the oceans of the world. And the oceans of the world are not much different than our circulating fluids. So that's an example. There's fluoride all over in us. So I see roles for the fluoride, kinetic roles for the fluoride. I'm pretty sure fluoride is a player in this whole business of cutting things, phosphorus and sulfur compounds. And that's something someday will come out, I hope, or I think. And I better keep going here. Okay. Now here's what Jim Saccatini and Ina Krieger found in their X-ray efforts. They were really up for some surprises at TAMU. The X-rays, this is published in Nature now, so you can read about it in more better pace than this. But what we found was that the thing gets a hold of well, before you know what happens, the thing is reacted to form the sulfate of the serine. So now we got the serine, which is the active site serine for this protein that's combining fatty acids, Claisen chemistry. It's gotten itself nailed by a spear that has a fluorosulfate, and so now it's a fluorosulfate. It's an aromatic with there's a couple of other aromatic rings. It's hanging on there, and it's a leaving group. And so what happens is it doesn't stay there long. This happens within minutes or seconds that it starts forming this thing in the macrophages, and then it fires again. But now the fatty acid, the amino acid behind the serine on one side is a lysine, and the lysine's NH nitrogen amide bond can be aligned directly with the backside of the serine. So bam, it just displaces it, clean as a whistle, makes the beta-lactam. And that lactam, and that protein just sit there for days, for at least a day or two. So this enzyme, this bacterium has had a javelin thrown at it, and then the thing pulls out the leaving group and makes a beta-lactam. And that beta-lactam is just a brick. It's just sitting there like a little nip ring on top of the active site of the protein. Well, that must be bad news because it does stop the bacterium dead in its tracks. And that's something which I'm getting excited about. Nobody got me excited about this. I had to read and talk to the people who did experiments, and it's not quite, it's in the paper though. So that means these fluorosulfates, which are like bricks, unless there's somebody to love them, and it has to be a live protein. You take dead protein, dead anything, you show it to these sleeping beauties. I call them sleeping beauties because they're able to respond to their prince if it's the right prince. And you know, it's like you kiss the sleeping beauty and she wakes up, and then you're together forever. And it's like that. I mean, the living system is producing all these electric fields, and I'm saying something at the end. I hope I don't get too far behind again, but I want to say that this is something I think we're missing here in the mainstream of biotechnology and biochemistry and drug discovery. They just don't recognize Steve Boxer's work, and it's massive now. He's been doing it for 30 years, and I just want to make sure you know about that before I leave. And so what happens is the dance that these little proteins can do, when it comes to the sulfonyl fluoride, their work in this dance is really appreciated by that sulfur fluorine bond, the SuFEx bond breakage. And well, the problem with sulfur, silicon, phosphorus, they're right under carbon, nitrogen, and oxygen. They couldn't be more different. They have no pi bonds. See, I draw those pi bonds. See, I don't think I'm looking at the right, where am I doing this now? Oh, here's the beta-lactam, and that was hard to identify at first, but thank God for Jim and Ina. They did it really well, and they backed it up. So, oops. Oh, shucks. Something's wrong here. I don't know what's happened now. Oh, it's going backwards. Okay, I want to show you. Yeah, I got the right slide there. Okay. I'm just not used to this screen. I'm sorry about that. Okay, this is a TLC plate. This is mother home for me. Ever since I was a pre-med at Dartmouth, I got to start using TLC. And man, TLC became a voice from the molecules to me. I mean, it's not just anything. I can see whether they're in biomedical range or whatever. You can see if they're bricks or not. Here is 25% ethyl hexane. A farnesol geraniol move halfway up the plate. It's a typical terpene type groove, not polar. And then look at these things: the fluorosulfate, the fluorosulfonate, the sulfonyl fluoride, various things. Here's benzophenone. It's got a pretty much more polar oxygen. These guys have lots of things bristling. The phosphorus and the sulfur in the 5 and 6 state. They have things bristling all over, and those things should have negative charges on them, but they don't. They don't seem to have affection for the silica gel. And you know, if you have an amide or a urea, I mean, that stuff is really stuck on the silica gel, because that amide is a pi bond. It's leading into that carbonyl with electron density polarized to the oxygen. That doesn't happen with sulfur. And so it's a miracle that we can get any reaction to happen at the nucleus where sulfur is. Okay, this seems, I guess what did I do? Okay, did I So down here at the bottom, I say, yeah, people just don't know that. And people have buried that, as far as I can tell, the fact that we don't have tetrahedral. We don't have pi bonds to sulfur and phosphorus. And you can tell by the thin layer. If you make a sulfonamide of an aromatic sulfonyl chloride, the sulfonamide has a beautiful NMR. It's just free rotating. And I'll show you some more evidence for that in a second. So here's one where we, with Stefan Serafanos at Emory, we did, see, I'm up again, sorry. Aryl fluorosulfates, we made about 1,200 of them. We can make 100 a week if we want. We sometimes we always make about 10 a week or 20. We just keep making fluorosulfates. And these are nice compounds. They're stable, they're crystalline, they run on thin layer, they're not hydrolyzed by normal juices and everything. So there's just an example of some of them. Sleeping beauties, which can only react with the live proteins. That's the way you should think of them. And here's one where Stefan Sarnos, we made a lot of things years ago, and finally they got around to testing them, and he'd moved to Emory since then. And this was a covalent inhibitor for the COVID the capsid protein of HIV, I'm sorry. So they published that recently here in 2024 in Cell Chem Biology. And you see a lot of these anthracene, like you can just make fluorosulfates and you can put tags on them like acetylenes and azides. You can make little libraries of things that just don't care much about the world around them, but they're connected together and they're soluble. They aren't soluble really, but they get out into the proteome and into the incubation. They don't like themselves. You see, they're not lipophilic. They're not polar, and they don't even like themselves. And that's just like fluorinating chemicals, right? They go off by themselves. Well, this ability to go off by yourself is not that bad, actually, because we got a lot of that stuff in the form of DNA, and DNA is like that, you know, but it's got a charge. It should be much more polar than it is. People don't realize that you know, if that was a polycarbonate anion of something, that would be a brutal situation for bioavailability and for existence. But here we have this hidden. Where do they go? They're just somewhere, but they're polarized. They're not pi bonds. These things are polarized sigma bonds. You understand what I'm saying? No, I think not. Okay. And here's one that I hope appeals to you. Hongbo, who's here today, Hongbo has done so much chemistry at Scripps, and he humored me and made some of these because these are old cores that we had worked with Bruce Hammack at Davis on, and to make SCH, soluble epoxide hydrolase inhibitors. And he made well, we're going to make 100 grams of some of these just to have them around. I wanted to show you though, this is the X-ray, and this group at Berkeley, at UCSD has really been great to us. Milan Gembecki and Jake Bailey, the X-ray team over there, they've probably gotten 50 or 100 X-rays for us in this series. And look what these are like. This is a urea, right? Ureas are Kevlar. Think Kevlar. If you have a polyurea, you got Kevlar, right? It's not much fun to work with. And in fact, I think the Russians licensed it, or somebody licensed it from DuPont, but they couldn't make it. I mean, no, it's not. This is a high-tech polymer, right? It's bulletproof, but you got to know you got to have right technique to even make it. So this is a urea, and ureas are like this, and the aromatic rings are conjugated. Everybody's conjugated through here with real pi bonds. This is an electrical type connection because it's a conjugated connection. This is a thiourea, which I won't go into, but it's also like that. So you see how they are. They're flat. they're cross-conjugated. They have these groups all on a plane, and they're showing the world this. In order for them to change, they have to go through a real problem with the pi bonding, and so they have no easy barrier transmission to get over. Come to the sulfamide, my favorite. I love sulfamides and sulfamates and sulfates and all these guys. They don't have any love for each other in terms of pi bonds. There are no pi bonds. These oxos are an illusion. They are negative, positive. So here we go. What's the structure of that? Well, I love this one because I love octopuses, octopi. And it looks like it's just, it's got its arms hanging down. It's ready to do this. It's ready to do that. It's ready to go anywhere you want because there's no pi bonds banging it to death. It's got to hit another atom to stop. I mean, the rotation. Oh, okay. I better stop. Okay. I'm getting there, I think. So don't you think and these are active against resistant staph and stuff. Many of these polysulfates, we've got thousands, 500 of them probably. And if you're interested in testing, this is a slide by, so this one is just okay, here it is. Yeah. This slide is by, oh, what's happening? It's just running. I have no idea what's going on. Oh, God. Okay. Okay, we got that one. And this one. And, oh, this is Hongbo. Hongbo is got, Zhang has made libraries here at Scripps. He's making them by the thousands, by the hundreds and thousands for people in the community, UCSD, I think, too. It's just he's offering to make these libraries, doing what Jiajia does in China by the 10,000s a day. I mean, Jiajia's got a real factory for making triazoles, and you can't stop that reaction. You can test right away. So you move very fast in biological screens with triazole linkages. And here you see this reaction is making triazoles, but down here he's making imido sulfur difluorides, and then we can put amines in, and this is something Chen has developed it in our lab to make the sulfur amides, various compounds like this. And so these libraries are very stable once you get them, and they make very high yield. So he's offering those to people, and he actually likes to get volunteer amines, more amines. He's got, well, the primary amines are great because primary amines, thanks to Jiajia's fantastic diazotization reagent, give a quantitative yield of the azide. So Jiajia's got 10,000 azides right now, and Wuxi is looking to provide more, on up towards 100,000. So if you have an amine, primary amine, you've got an azide in seconds with this reagent. And that's something you should know about. Okay, here we go. This is my acknowledgement slide. And the caliber teams, I mean, Peter Schultz, I'm grateful for him for the encouragement we've gotten to work on these things, especially the tuberculosis, right? And this is Kathy, my admin, and John Capiel, my lieutenant, and there's Hongbo, and Ge, and Tao, and Chi Chao. These are all, he's new, and she's gone on to Yale as a postdoc in a biology group, and he's invented a lot of reactions that I wish I could tell you about, because chemists would like to know. The fluorosulfate, it doesn't care what you're doing. It makes sulfonyl chlorides. If you put a sulfonyl chloride in with it, it's very stable. And sulfonyl chlorides are given to disaster, redox fragmentations, redox messes. But when they have a fluorosulfate in them, they don't seem to be able to do it. And they get really hot. You can get all kinds of derivatives and make them very hot, and they're still there. So finally, I come to this thing at the end where I wanted to say, Steve Boxer, he's been around for years, ever since I started at MIT. He's maybe 10 years younger than me, but he's a physical chemist trained by what's his name? Anyway, McConnell and he worked a lot together at Stanford. He's more like McConnell. He's more like a physicist. And he's had this really amazing insight. For years now, he's been doing it. And it's using the electric fields that are around everything in this condensed world of ours in our body. There are electric fields that sort of work their way out to be fluxing, right? But they're created and they make a statement to the reactivity. Unless you reach the right electric field, you will not have a reaction. You can worry about all the other things that are going on, but you reach that threshold for that electric field for that reaction, it's over. This is something Harry Warshall has preached too. And so I'm looking forward. I'm trying to get back together with Steve because he's the one who can tell you whether your protein is going to excite one of these sulfonyl fluorides to react with itself. And this is a matter of measuring. He measures electric fields with a Stark effect. He puts in thiocyanide or cyanide in the active site. And then you can have a picture of what your electric field is and how it's changing. So I don't know where we've all been, but we're dependent on these electric fields. And for enzymes especially, because enzymes have really flabbergasted us with their rate accelerations, right? Well, it's all in the electric field. You can see it. I mean, you can see it in solution, you can see it in the enzyme, and it's a different story. And it's very dramatic and it's very reproducible. Isn't that something we should know about? But can you imagine how bad physics, we're so scared of physics, most of us, that we just we stick our head in the sand and we tend to, oh yeah, that's okay, but we got all these other ways of talking about it. And I read the papers from so many people that are just talking about mechanism and entropy and enthalpy, and they don't tell you anything. Nothing. I'm worried about that. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Professor Sharpless. So now we can all tell, the enthusiasm of Professor Sharpless in the science. So no wonder you won Nobel Prize twice. So wish you maybe another one. So I just want to open, yes, we already probably past time, but I still want to open, to the audience. So anyone has a question to Professor Sharpless? Well, need to be a good question.
I really have only one question, very brief. You talk about the connection between fundamental science, physics, chemistry, but that's challenging because one has limited expertise. So how do you see that?
I missed, okay, I'm not hearing, I have
sorry.
hearing aids, but they don't work very well.
Dr. Sharpless, you talked about the fundamental science like physics, chemistry, right?
Yeah.
And your last comment is people sometimes bury their head in the sand, but the reason behind is they have limited expertise. With a boost of AI and other things, how do you see one can really no longer bury their head, but really explore interdisciplinary breakthroughs like your platform technology?
Yeah, AI question is really strong on my mind too. And Jiajia over in China, he's nuts about AI. And he's got people that in the community there, one of the smartest young guys came to him because he wrote it into his computer, what do I need from chemistry or what do I need for AI? This famous guy. And it said, you need click chemistry. So then he looks around and he sounds, Jiajia's a click chemist. And he's right there in the same town. So these guys are in cahoots now. But what you need is, see, chemistry makes things. But if you can't make them the same day and test them, What are you doing? You're going to plan. You're going to have all these things. And then you're going to have sacred cows. They start lining up. Oh, this is active. I can't get rid of that. So you stay with it. It's like your dog or your child. You can't kill them. And you know, you really, it's parental affection. It's really bad for MedChem, for all of you, I think. You need to keep putting every day more things on the shelf as candidates to go to immediately. Whenever you see something ugly like a bad tox thing, it's going to kill you for sure. You see that, you immediately go to the next guy on the shelf. You don't just talk about it. I mean, you don't need to worry. If you have thousands, see, that's the thing about, read about the article in Angewandte Chemie. It's an article I wrote, it's called Click Chemistry, the Certainty of Chance. In other words, if you look at how many compounds there are that you can make in this world, it's so many, it's ridiculous. We haven't made maybe we made about 100 millionth, billionth, trillionth part of the sun. It's just, there's just no compounds in the category of drug-sized molecules that we've made. So the ones we make are often hard to make. So you better make stuff you can make and then have access to it and make it into a manufacturing material and keep moving. So that's the problem that I've run into, because I saw perfect reactions. Two of them came out from our lab. QAC, same as Morten Meldahl, had it in Holland and Denmark at the same time. And then came SuFEx, and more are sort of working around now. But perfect reactions, we didn't really know what a perfect reaction was until there was one. Right? Because you never get 99.9999% yield with every run of the thing. That's what you get with QAC. You don't get that when you make libraries. You've got these mixtures. Sometimes you get 1%, sometimes you get 80%. But headwinds are constantly coming at chemistry. Unless you have a killer reaction, you shouldn't be using it to make compounds. It's that simple. I'm telling you, that's the brutal part of this. You cannot compete with somebody who can make a kilogram the next week of anything he discovers or he or she discovers. You just won't be able to compete with them. I think you could see that if you think about what you do in the lab. You get these little teeny things, and oh my God, you got a chromatography. Forget it. I'm a Hubenweil freak. Hubenweil was a great German cookbook before chromatography. And it doesn't have chromatographies. All it's got is crystallizations, crash outs, and distillations. No chromatographies apply here, please. And I made almost my famous chemistry over the years. It was sexy because I went into Hubenweil. I read German from Quaker school I went to. We were trying to go to German exchange school in Munich. And so I read, so I love German. And so I read the recipes, and it tells me exactly what I put in, it tells me what crashes out. I filter, it tells me, then I go to the next step. I don't put that in my syntheses in the old days when I was doing it for fun to show chemistry reactivity. That's how I made things. People didn't realize that our compounds are a little sexier, and there were grams of them usually, sometimes hundreds of grams. And if you can't do it on a 100-gram scale, in principle, the day you do it the first time, you're not in the game, I'm afraid. That's the way I try to stay in the game in that way. And I may be wrong, but humans are so easily sort of trapped into things that they all do and they love them. So maybe it's going to go on being really more and more precious angel in the heads of a pin type chemistry, but it may be I don't know how that's going to pay mankind, because mankind doesn't get drugs already, right? Most, about 90% of humans don't have refrigerators. And I mean, it's ridiculous what they're facing.
A quick one, last one.
Hi, Professor Sharpless. Great talk. I really like the slide on the TLC. I always looked at like ureas and diureas, and I noticed the difference in the polarity, right? And how sulfur is not as electronegative as oxygen. And I was also just kind of curious, and more on like the science curiosity part. You worked on osmium, azides, and now sulfur is kind of like a highlight. I'm just curious onto what do you think is maybe also piquing your interest in some other element or some kind of functional group, maybe cobalt, or what's the future in terms of your curiosity?
That's a good question. Yeah, germanium is doing some things. So silicon, germanium, you go down into the main group, the P block. Well, we made selenium dioxy difluoride. That's like sulfurofluoride. One of my students, a brave Chinese fellow who's back in China now, Suha, he made 20 mils of selenium oxydifluoride. It's a liquid. It's almost a liquid, which makes it, because the sulfur one is a gas, and we thought, this is great. We're going to be able to do all kinds of changes, and you show it water in another phase, and it's gone instantly. In other words, selenium oxydifluoride goes to 300 degrees centigrade with water in the gas. It doesn't react with the water. It's just quadrupole, has no quadrupole. It just happens to be totally neutral. And so the selenium oxy guy, the reason he reacts is you go down in the main group, and like sulfur is this size, phosphorus is this size, and then there's a huge contraction across that group, and also on the row above, carbon, nitrogen, oxygen. But you get down to the selenium and the tellurium, they start to get really big, and now the things that make it hard to get water in there or hydrolyze things, they start going away. You know, people tried to make arsenic into phosphate. I felt sorry for that woman who found that, because I just knew right away it couldn't be what she said, because I knew that arsenic esters exchange with aluminum alcohols and TBHP. They exchange really fast, and phosphorus doesn't. Phosphorus is kinetically, so you go down to phosphorus, arsenic, you're going to have a really slippery nucleic acid program. It's not going to work. So, and they're still not admitting that. They should just pack it up and forget it. I mean, this is what you know when you know chemistry and you know the time scale for existence in a medium, right? You got to be sure you know, if you want something to work for you out there in the jungle, you got to know its ability to survive on that trip through the jungle, and it's not impossible to do. People don't know pH a lot. In fact, when I was a student, on one of my best postdocs ever, Jason Hine, I said, Jason, we can't do that. You don't know the pH. And he said, give me an hour, come back in an hour. How many students will tell you that? pH matters. Richard Lerner's